4 days ago, we arrived in Spain for the very first time. After spending those days in the cities of Malaga and Sevilla, there were a lot of things that surprised us. From the driving to the dining, the culture in these cities is very different than what we're used to in the United States, and we're going to tell you all about it in this video.
But since Jamie and I both grew up in and love exploring rural areas, we wanted to see what Spain was like outside of the big cities too. So we're going to be going a bit off the beaten path over the next few days. We'll be starting right here in the small coastal town of Conil de la Frontera before heading into the mountains to visit some even more rural areas. As always, we'll be bringing you with us on our adventures and telling you all about our thoughts on the culture of both urban and rural Spain along the way.
Our first day of exploring the less urban side of Spain actually began in Sevilla, from where we took a 2-hour bus ride to Conil de la Frontera, which we learned goes by just Conil for short. The bus ride was only $20 each with luggage and was actually quite enjoyable, as the seats were comfortable and the views of the countryside were great. Before we knew it, we had arrived in Conil, where we dropped off our luggage at our hotel before finding a place to eat.
So we're here at Pepa's, not really sure how you pronounce this place, but it was only a couple minutes walk from our hotel room and it's rated really well, and we definitely see why, because their pastry display looked amazing. Now we got a cappuccino, a croissant that's stuffed with some sort of cream, and a sandwich with special ham, avocado, and arugula. It all looks great, and it was all under $15. I'm pretty sure back in Florida this meal would cost us at least $30.
I'm just gonna take a big bite out of this. So this is one thing that definitely tastes as good as it looks. The cream inside, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like a Bavarian cream, but different.
So the ham in this sandwich we've seen all over Malaga and Sevilla, and it's delicious, but we have not yet had it in a sandwich, and this bread smells really fresh. I'm excited to try this. So the bread's a little bit drier than I thought, but it is good. The ham's delicious. I wish there was more of it. Overall, it is a solid sandwich, but the highlight of this meal is definitely that cream stuffed croissant.
No, I actually really like this bread, especially with a little bit of the olive oil on it. So while we were enjoying our food, we were talking about which pastries we wanted to come back to enjoy tomorrow. But we decided we better check Google for the hours, and thank goodness we did, because they are actually closed tomorrow. So we had to pick out 2 more pastries to enjoy in the morning, or maybe even later tonight. After lunch, we checked into our hotel and spent a little bit of time booking things for the rest of our trip. Now we're out exploring this city, and thankfully the sun has come out, but it's still pretty windy and quite cold. But that's not going to prevent us from going to the beach. So we got a little bit sidetracked. We were heading to the beach and we saw this path, so we just had to see where it leads. It kind of leads up to this little forest. So the path eventually led up here. It looks like we'll be able to access the beach over there. On our walk down to the beach, we noticed there was a restaurant here, so we looked it up on Google. It is rated pretty good, and it's open tonight. So I think we're gonna plan to come here for sunset. So here's the restaurant, and there's the beach. It's gonna be a great view.
But before we could eat dinner, we'd have to work up an appetite, and we found plenty of beachfront walkways in Conil to do just that. Although with so many unique things to stop and look at along this gorgeous stretch of beach, we weren't getting a whole lot of walking in. But eventually, we made our way northwards towards some beautiful beachfront bluffs that we could see off in the distance. And while we had no idea if we could hike all the way to them, we were sure gonna try.
Now, the first thing that surprised us about Conil de la Frontera was how easy and inexpensive it was to get here. We came here on a bus from Sevilla, and there were actually multiple buses we could have chosen to get here. Now, that differs greatly from in the United States, where most cities of only around 20,000 or so, like Conil, aren't going to have any public transportation going to them. And if they do, it's probably only going to be 1 route per day, and it's also probably going to be pretty expensive. So it's safe to say that the ease of access to the rural areas via public transportation is one thing that really surprised us in a good way about Spain.
Now, we had heard horror stories of travelers taking buses in other countries, but thankfully our experience was a good one. Our bus looked to be very new, it was comfortable, and it had charging ports, but one thing that surprised me is that they did not announce the stops. So we really had to pay attention and follow along on Google Maps to get off on the right stop. That was very different than the train ride we took between Malaga and Sevilla, where every stop was announced.
Now, getting around within Conil and other small Spanish cities is not quite as easy as it is in the bigger ones, as ride-hailing services like Uber, Bolt, and Cabify did not seem to operate here. But we had no problems walking around these smaller cities, and we did see several cabs driving around as well.
Oh, this pathway is just surrounded by flowers. Oh yeah, there's another viewpoint up here. This is a great view of the water, the beach, and the cliffs in the distance. So at the last lookout, there was a path that somebody went down, and we decided to follow and see where it led. This is beautiful. I love that there are so many flowers here, even though it's winter time. It is a lot greener than I expected it would be this time of year. What do you think? Should we keep going?
Definitely.
All right. Now, like the beach towns where we live on the Gulf Coast of Florida, they have a high season and a low season. We are definitely visiting here during the low season, and a lot of the businesses are closed. And as you can probably see behind me, there are not very many people on the beach.
But that's probably about where the similarities to Florida beach towns end. Now, as you can probably tell, we are up really high on a bluff right now, overlooking this beautiful beach. And you aren't gonna find anything like that in Florida because Florida is incredibly flat. Now, the beaches here actually remind me a lot more of the beaches in California with all of the cliffs that line them. But I had mentioned earlier that the meal we got was probably like half the price of what it would cost in Florida. Well, California is even more expensive than Florida, and that same meal in California would probably cost 3 times as much. So being able to get this gorgeous California-like scenery and beach experience while spending so much less for food and entertainment is definitely another thing that surprised us in a very good way about Spain.
There's a lot of RVs down there. What a great place to camp. I don't think there's any beach hike like this in Florida. Wow. It just keeps going.
So we finally made it to the top of this big cliff that we've been hiking towards. There's this abandoned house up here. There's also what appears to be a restaurant over there. So we're gonna go see what's going on over there, and then we're gonna try to find a path down to the beach. So apparently this place is closed, which is a bummer because they got a really good looking menu and some pretty good prices too. Now, if that tiki bar was open, we would definitely be spending some time here because these views are unbelievable. So we were really planning on trying to get back to that restaurant for sunset, but now we're kind of thinking we might just want to hang out up here to watch it because these views are so good. I don't think Jamie wants to really have to walk all the way back on the beach in the dark though, so we'll probably start heading down soon.
Now, while it definitely was not easy leaving these amazing views, it helped knowing we'd have a beautiful beach walk all the way to our dinner spot.
We did eventually make it down to the beach. We had to come check out this rock area. The tide does appear to be out right now, so we're able to kind of walk through this area. It's kind of cool because when the waves come in, you can hear rocks hitting each other. There's some different looking shells here too.
So we're finally heading back in the direction we came from, and we honestly weren't planning on spending anywhere close to that much time out on that trail. But as we went further, the views just kept getting better. But the timing actually kind of worked out well because now we should be arriving at that restaurant right around sunset.
Now there are a few different restaurants right along the beach here, like this one, and there's one up there. Now this definitely looks like our kind of place. We're gonna have to come back here when it's not low season, because there's so many more places we would want to go to. So we are trying to get up there, and we've had a hard time finding a path to get there, but we think this one leads to some stairs that will hopefully get us up there. Oh, there's a horse right here. It's furry. It's not like a full-size horse, but it's also not a mini horse.
You like pets, buddy?
Like, I like snacks. Do you have a snack for me?
Oh, I got 2 pets.
He wants snacks.
Although we did find some horses on the beach when we visited the island of Vieques in Puerto Rico, we'd never expect to find that in Florida, and it was definitely a highlight of this day in Conil.
Oh yeah, this is definitely gonna get us to where we need to go. Stairs run right along this cliff edge.
It's kind of crazy how this whole parking lot over here just sits on the top of this cliff. So you get out of your car and you already have an amazing view of the beach.
We're used to seeing palm trees, so this is kind of neat to have a different type of tree at the beach.
So we did make it back to our dinner spot with a few minutes to spare before sunset, but I'm not real confident we're gonna be able to find a seat there because it looks really packed. So we lucked out. There were still a couple of spots open on the patio and the views are every bit as good as we thought they would be.
So this spot ended up only offering a small variety of tapas, so we had some snacks and some drinks. Now those tapas don't compare to what we had in Sevilla and in Malaga, but the views here were so much better than any of the restaurants in Malaga or Sevilla. Next, we're gonna go find another place to have a little bit more food.
So we just left our Sunset Beach spot and we got 2 tapas, a cappuccino, a juice, and 2 really good beers. And our bill was under $17. Now, even though we're on like day 5 in Spain now, these prices still continue to blow my mind. And I think it's safe to say we have a little bit of room left in the budget for another spot for dinner tonight. So we are now walking to our dinner spot. It's about an 11-12 minute walk and we are getting pretty cold. It gets chilly here in Conil in the winter. The walk here kind of reminds us like we're back in Malaga or Sevilla. It's got brick streets that are super narrow and surrounded by old buildings on both sides. We made it to our dinner spot here at Cachito, and the menu does seem to have a lot of Asian influence, but in typical Spanish style, most of their menu items are available as tapas. We ordered a tuna and potato dish, a roasted duck bao bun, cachito, and a roasted pork leg dish. And Jamie ordered a mango lemonade, and I ordered a Negroni, which actually came served in a flask within a book, and I didn't even realize that flask was in there for several minutes.
All right.
Now, despite this being one of the most expensive meals we had in Spain, we can't say it was the best, as the cachito was quite small and the tuna potato dish was kinda weird. But we did both really enjoy the pork dish and the bao bun, and Skylar said that this Negroni was one of the best he'd ever had.
After dinner, we tried to find some flamenco music because there were a couple spots that said they were open on Google, but both of them were closed. We're realizing there are even more businesses that are closed during season or have more limited hours. But we took that as a sign that we just needed to come back to our hotel because we knew we had these to try. They wrap these up so nicely. So we got this blackberry thing and a pistachio cheesecake. So we forgot to ask for utensils. This is gonna be a little bit messy. Look at the inside. It kind of is the consistency of a cheesecake, but maybe a little bit lighter. It's very good. I told Skylar to be very careful and he's already like made a mess.
I don't know how to eat this without a fork.
We don't need to be cleaning sheets at another place.
No. I think it will pair very well with my $5 bottle of Spanish wine.
Oh, we didn't even tell them. We stopped by. Skylar! Well, Skylar's going to be washing sheets again. Skylar has now decided that using his wine that we got from a store on the way home.
Spanish wine is widely known to be a great stainer mover.
Skylar is now eating the rest of the blackberry dessert over the sink.
Yep. Not risking it anymore.
We just decided to go for it and we're gonna have this one too. This is a pistachio cheesecake. It's very interesting feeling. It doesn't seem to have a crust maybe, or if it is a crust, it's a soft one. Do you see how much that's moving around there?
It looks pretty jiggly.
Yeah, pretty jiggly. So the flavor is really good, but that consistency, maybe if we would have eaten it right away, maybe it would have been more of your typical cheesecake consistency, but it is really good flavor. Skylar has made himself a spoon out of the size of the container that it came in.
So this thing looks disgusting, but I think that's absolutely delicious.
Our second day in Conneaut began with cloudy skies and empty streets, as this tourist town seemed to be in hibernation for the winter.
It is feeling quite strange to be in a coastal city when it's in its off season. There are just entire streets that are closed up.
This is one of the few shops we found close to the beach that is actually open. Now we had to start our day off back out on this trail because we know it's going to be a while before we're able to experience this great of a beachfront hike again.
But our second hike on this trail was even more enjoyable, as we got to watch several paragliders drifting up and down the beach, and one of them we even got to meet. So shout out to Leonard from Germany, who's a really nice guy and far more brave than us, for teaching us a little bit about paragliders. We learned that Leonard's setup is actually a bit of a cross between a paraglider and kiteboard, which allows him to be able to maneuver a bit more aggressively than the other paragliders. While Skylar was convinced that he'd love to try paragliding someday, it's safe to say I'm still on the fence.
Now, unfortunately, we don't have much more time here in Conneaut because we have to go to the bus stop this afternoon. Now, our hotel did allow us to store our luggage so we can be out and about and explore the city a little bit more. That is something else that surprised us here in Spain. There are places to store your luggage everywhere. And while we're able to do it here at the hotel, whenever we were in the larger cities, there were places to store your luggage for maybe a couple bucks for the entire day. So it's really easy to enjoy a city, even if you're traveling with luggage.
Now getting back to our hotel, the lodging in Spain is another thing we were amazed by, as we were able to consistently find very nice hotels for far less than they would cost back at home. For example, this hotel that we stayed at in Conneaut was less than $70 for the night.
From speaking with Leonard and residents here in Conneaut, we learned that it's not very common for American tourists to visit this area of Spain, but it is very popular among German tourists. Now, you will find more American tourists in Sevilla and Malaga, but those spots are even more popular among British tourists.
So we had to get off of the trail and head back into town because our bus leaves in a couple of hours and we still got to grab lunch. Now, just looking around at the restaurants near the beach and in the Old Town area, I'd say at least 3 out of 4 are closed right now, but thankfully we did find one that is open and is conveniently located right next to our hotel.
I ordered a cappuccino and Skylar ordered a cafe con leche, and mine definitely looks prettier. Like most of the coffees we've had here in Spain, it's very strong. I'm gonna add a little bit of sugar to it.
So 2 of our 3 food orders have arrived. This one is some sort of a garlic shrimp crepe. We think this one has tuna in it, but we're not exactly sure what's in any of these items because the menus are only in Spanish. We do use our translator app, which works pretty well, but it doesn't accurately translate all of the words, so the menu items are a bit of a mystery. Ever since I saw them making fresh calamari at that market in Malaga, I have been craving it, and I finally got it today. It's very lightly breaded, a little bit, but not very crispy. It really allows you to taste the actual squid. I do think it could use a little bit of salt, but if I find some salt for it, I know I'm gonna love it.
While neither the calamari or this fried tuna dish were great, the shrimp crepe absolutely was. And while we can't say that this meal was as good as some of the ones we had in Malaga and Sevilla, at just 28 euros total, we still thought it was a bargain. But with our first meal of the day out of the way, it was time to grab our luggage and make our way to the bus station.
So we arrived at the bus station here in Conneaut about 40 minutes prior to our bus's departure, which means we had some time to kill. Luckily, they do have a little cafe here at this bus station, even though it is a small one. They serve drinks and sandwiches, so I got myself a local beer, I got Jamie a juice, and we shared a sandwich. Now, we have yet to have chorizo on this trip, so I got a chorizo sandwich. It was just chorizo on bread, but the chorizo was really high quality, as was the bread, so it was actually a surprisingly good sandwich, and both of those drinks and the sandwich was only 8 euros total.
Next, we are actually taking a break from exploring Spain. We're hopping on a bus to Tarifa.
How much you want to bet I can throw a football over those mountains?
And then on a ferry over to Morocco. Now, we are going to be sharing our Morocco experience in a future episode, so if you don't want to miss that, make sure that you're subscribed to our channel. But next, in this episode, we're heading to the mountains.
We found the roads on this drive to be quite similar to those in the US. They were wide and pretty easy to navigate, but they would become quite narrow and winding further up in the mountains.
we made it back to Spain from Morocco. Now, if you haven't seen that episode yet and are interested in that experience, we'll make sure to put a link to that episode in the video description. We got off of the ferry a few hours ago, and since then, we picked up our rental car and started this gorgeous drive up into the mountains. Now, unfortunately, we were not able to enjoy that drive near as much as we should have because we don't really have a place to stay tonight. So we spent most of this drive on the phone with Expedia. Now, we had booked a hotel through Expedia. We had it paid for and everything in a small mountain town up here. We had got a message from the hotel letting us know that they were canceling our reservation because they didn't agree with the price that Expedia had listed. Now, that would have been fine if right away Expedia had just given us a refund, but there was some sort of communication barrier between Expedia and the hotel, and unfortunately, we were caught in the middle. So we've had to speak with Expedia multiple times, emailed with them, tried to communicate with the hotel multiple times, and unfortunately, it's really just put a big damper on this part of our trip. Even though the hotel was putting in writing that they were canceling our reservation, Expedia wouldn't give us a refund because they weren't able to get in touch with the hotel, and when they finally did get in touch with them, they only spoke Spanish, which makes total sense because we are in Spain. Now, the fact that it took Expedia this long to get somebody who spoke Spanish to connect with the hotel to get this resolved is absolutely ridiculous. After 24 hours of fighting with them, they finally have agreed to refund our money, and we're just hoping that we're able to find somewhere to stay tonight.
Now, there was much more to this Expedia story, but we couldn't waste any more time and had to shift our focus to finding a new place to stay, as we knew each of these mountain villages were small with limited options for hotels.
Yeah, if we can stay at this hotel, we should. This town is sweet.
So, quick update. We parked and called around to a few hotels. There were a couple of them that were completely full, but one of them said they had availability. It was about a 25-minute drive, so we're on our way there right now.
And now it's a race against daylight because I do not want to be driving on this road in the dark and the sun just set.
So this road at sunset on the side of this mountain is absolutely gorgeous, but it is narrow and it is a two-way road, so we have to be very careful. So we made it to this other village. It's starting to get dark. We went from thinking we were staying in a village up on the side of a mountain to hopefully staying here in a valley. We're a little nervous to get to this hotel to see what it's like because we weren't able to do any research. We were just finding some place that was relatively close that had availability. So wish us luck. I think you go over the train tracks and take a right. So we made it to the hotel and they had plenty of availability, and I think we were supposed to be here tonight because it has such a different feel, exactly what we were looking for. We are on the second floor. Look at this hallway. I'll meet you up there. Look at this place. It's got wood floors. We have a really old little chandelier. Skylar really likes this chair. We're not going to show you much because we are really hungry, but here's our bathroom. It actually has a bidet. We were not expecting that here. And there's a tub and shower back there. Now I know it's dark so you can't see too much of the property, but it does have a restaurant and a bar, so we're gonna go eat.
After driving us through the mountains, Skylar was ready for another Spanish beer. And I was ready to try some more croquetas. While we both thought the croquetas were good, we agreed our main dishes were even better. I went with the chicken burger, which was a fried chicken patty with an egg and cheese. And Skylar couldn't pass up the oxtail dish. The oxtail was our favorite as it was fall off the bone tender and full of flavor. We loved the atmosphere as it felt like a mountain lodge, and the service was great too.
So we are on our way to an excursion this morning, and we got about 15 minutes to spare. And since we're leaving too early to get breakfast at the hotel, we decided to stop at a little grocery store to see what we could find. And here it is. So the stop by the store was a success. For about $5, we got some pastries, a drink, and I think we're about 25 minutes from our excursion. So hopefully we'll make it there in time. We got to drive back down this super windy road though. So I'm really glad that the guy at the car rental place talked us into renting a smaller car than the one we had reserved. We had like a mid-size SUV reserved because we thought the roads in the mountains could potentially be in rough shape, and we kind of wanted a big SUV to be able to handle that. But we found that the roads are actually in great shape, but they're very narrow, so I'm glad we got a much smaller car. It's easier to meet the other vehicles on the road and get by them, and also a lot easier to park.
What the inside looks like. Very crumbly. So those wrapped pastries we tried were so interesting. Somehow they were dry and not dry at the same time. They were maybe more similar to like a cookie or a donut, and honestly they kind of grew on us. We liked them. So this morning we are doing a Via Ferrata. We've never done one before. We think it's a mixture of like hiking and climbing, but you're connected on a cable the entire time. The one we're doing is supposed to be the most difficult in this area, so we're really excited.
After getting parked, we met our tour guide Audrey, who is very friendly and knowledgeable about the area. He was more than willing to share information about the surrounding mountains and Spanish culture. We found most people we encountered on this trip to be similar, friendly and willing to answer our questions, both in the cities and in the rural areas.
We're hiking up to our starting point on this Via Ferrata, and we got a view right here where you can see Gibraltar in the distance. That's the big rock sticking out right around there. And past that, you can see some peaks just coming out of that haze, and that is Morocco.
We did find it to be less common for people to speak English in the more rural areas, but we were still able to communicate with our small Spanish vocabulary and Google Translate.
And normally, the Via Ferratas are going up.
Okay.
This one is a little bit strange. We're going down, okay?
Ooh.
You can see that we are entering in this level, and the exit is lower.
So we just got clipped in, and this is the view at the start of this thing. Audrey was explaining that most Via Ferratas go up, but this one actually goes down mostly.
Yes.
Having fun yet, Jamie?
Oh yeah.
From there, big step.
Big step.
Really big step.
You got it. Oh. Nice.
One difference between Spain and the US that affected us more than we expected was the time difference. This area of Spain is 6 hours ahead of the east coast of the US. We didn't know that jet lag symptoms involved more than just being tired or difficulty sleeping. And during the first couple of days on this trip, we both experienced bouts of dizziness and nausea. But thankfully, by this time in our trip, we were quite adjusted to the time change and could fully enjoy the Via Ferrata.
Here we can see where we're going. That is a bridge that we're going to cross, and then that is a zip line.
Another difference we experienced on this trip was the change of pace. The areas of Spain we visited generally seemed to be more laid back and moved at a slower pace than the States. One big example of this was at restaurants. It generally took longer to be seated, get our orders taken, and to receive our check. Once we experienced this a couple times, we got used to it and it didn't bother us. Now we will be sharing more about our different dining experiences a little later, but for now we'll get back to the Via Ferrata.
All right, we can't stay up here all day.
Such a great view.
I know, we should probably get going.
All right.
Heading down further next. It's like climbing a ladder.
Yep. Now, if you are old like me, I would definitely recommend stretching before this activity because some of these steps are pretty far apart. Oh, that one was too far.
All right, Skylar's finally decided to come down. It's hard to not just hang out and enjoy the view. This is the view before we go down. Go across that bridge.
Audrey's leaving you in the dust, Jamie.
I know.
Don't seem to be wobbling quite as much on that one. Maybe.
Getting there.
This one bubbling more
One more.
because it's longer.
Oh, okay.
Skylar's getting to the middle of this bridge. It's pretty wobbly.
It would look like I'm like really scared, right? Yeah, I'm not. Actually, it's pretty awesome. What do you think so far, Jamie?
It's amazing.
Ready for the zip line?
Yeah.
So we've kind of just been hanging out here for a bit, waiting for Audrey to get the zip line ready, and he just let us know that it was not a bad place to be hanging out.
No, not at all.
Just a nice little view of Gibraltar and Morocco. Trying to get Jamie set up for the zip line. I think we're getting close.
I made it across the zip line, and Audrey is preparing it for Skylar next. Here he goes!
What did you think of the zip line?
It was fun.
You went a lot slower than me.
Yeah, I did.
Woo! Sadly, I think we're almost done, but that's all right. We got a beautiful drive ahead of us still, and hopefully a really good lunch.
So we just finished our Via Ferrata experience with South Coast Adventures, and our guide Audrey was awesome. So if you're at all interested in doing a Via Ferrata, rock climbing, or even canyoneering, we'll make sure to leave their contact information in the video description. We are stopped off at a lookout here while Skylar finds us a place to eat. While he does that, I wanted to talk a little bit about our experience in these small mountain towns, because they were not what we expected at all. You know, where we're from in the Midwest, the towns are a lot more spread out and very relaxed. But these mountain towns still have city centers where the roads are super narrow. It's really crazy to drive through. It's really hard to find parking. Thankfully, our guide showed us the way out of the city. It would have been really hard for us to get out on our own. Even though the driving experience was really crazy, we still really enjoyed these mountain towns. They were very charming, and we wish we had more time to spend in them. For example, the one that we just came from even has a castle you can go up and see. Most of these mountain villages are white villages, but our guide let us know that nearby there is one that is completely blue. It has something to do with the Smurfs, but unfortunately we're not going to have time to visit it during this trip. Once we find a place to eat, we are going to drive through the mountains, and from what our guide said, it's going to be a beautiful drive. During that time, we'll probably share a little bit more of our experiences visiting all these different cities in Spain.
Now, as we drive to our lunch spot, we do have another difference worth mentioning. Both in the small villages and larger cities, we found it to be common for buildings to be several hundred years old, and it seemed to us that the communities do a lot to preserve them, which is much different than the American mentality of constantly tearing down old buildings to build new.
So pretty much our only criteria for our lunch spot today was that it had a great view, and we soon realized that there were going to be plenty of restaurants that met that criteria on this beautiful mountain drive. Unfortunately though, a lot of those restaurants only have a few parking spots out front, and they were all taken. Thankfully though, we did come across La Solana. It had a lot of parking spots, and as you can see, it has an amazing view.
So I've already tried both of these soups. The first one, the broth tastes a lot like chicken noodle, but instead of noodles, it has bread and egg in it. And I also ordered the dish of the day. I honestly didn't know it was gonna be a soup. I knew it was gonna have beans and vegetables and meat in it. It kind of reminds me of a vegetable beef soup, but with beans.
Now, when we were in Malaga and Sevilla, it seemed to be about a 50-50 chance that there would be pork legs hanging from the ceiling of a restaurant. In rural Spain, though, it does seem to be less common, but here at La Solana, there are 3 of them. Now, like in the United States, both in the urban and rural areas in Spain, they do often bring you a dish of bread before your meal. But unlike in the United States, they normally do charge you for it in our experience. Now, one time we were brought 2 different types of bread and we only ate one of them. And we noticed that we were only charged 50% of what that bread costs on the menu. So I'm guessing if you don't eat any of the bread, most of the places won't charge you for it, even though they brought it to your table. Sometimes they will also bring you olives as well. Now, unlike in the United States, the bread normally doesn't come with butter. Sometimes they will bring olive oil to your table, and if it's not already at your table, you can ask for it. And I should mention that even though they do charge you for the bread, it's normally only like 50 cents or $1, and most of it's been really good quality, so I've always ended up eating it. So I ordered the octopus leg. Honestly, I was kind of expecting it to be battered and fried. This obviously is not, but it looks really good. Jamie, are you going to be eating any of the octopus leg?
I don't know. So I do think the flavor is good, but for me, I have a hard time with that texture. I don't like feeling like the suctions on the tentacles. I think Skylar's going to be eating a lot of octopus.
So the more narrow section of this octopus leg is quite tender, but the wider section is quite a bit chewier. It all tastes great, though I agree with Jamie that the texture is a little bit strange, but I don't mind.
You could make a day of just driving through these mountains because there are so many villages you can drive through and stop at. There's also all these miradors, which are lookout points. We are finding that most of these miradors do have a nice map to show you where you are. This one's missing a few sections, but all the others we've seen have been in really good shape. You can see mirador, 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 all of the miradors along the drive. Unfortunately, we don't have all day to stop at all the lookout points, so we have to be selective.
Because there were so many lookouts along this winding road, it actually reminded us a bit of the Blue Ridge Parkway in Virginia and North Carolina in the US.
We're at our first gas station here in Spain. Skylar is trying to figure out how it works. It looks a little bit different than the States.
I don't know. I might just have to go inside and prepay. Maybe, yeah, but you might not be able to pay at the pump here. I don't know. Now, while we make our way to our next mountain village, we did want to talk a little bit about getting around here in the more rural areas of Spain. And unlike in the US, where you probably can't find public transportation to the smaller towns, almost all of the small towns here in Spain, from what we can tell, are accessible by either bus or train. However, unlike in the big cities, those stops are fewer and further between. So while we would have been able to get to all of the towns we visited over the last couple of days, it would have taken us much longer. And for that reason, we did decide to book a rental car. We also want to mention that if you do want to book a rental car as a U.S. citizen here in Spain, you do have to have an international driver's license, but that's actually really easy to get. You just have to go into a AAA office, pay a small fee, and you'll have your driver's license within a matter of minutes. Thankfully, we did find the pricing of the rental car here to be pretty straightforward. There is liability insurance that's required here in Spain to drive, but that's actually baked into the price of the rental car, which is much better than some other countries I've driven in, where we rent the car for one price and then you show up at the office and find out that you actually have to spend a lot more money in insurance. Now, most of the rental cars here in Spain are manuals, but we did pay a little bit extra to get an automatic. While I can drive a manual, I knew we were going to be driving up in the mountains. It was going to be very windy roads, and I was going to want to be able to enjoy the scenery and not have to worry about shifting all the time. Now, the speed limits here, of course, are in kilometers per hour, but that's fine because so is the speedometer in our rental car. And I've actually been doing a really good job of not speeding because our car actually beeps at us every time we go over the speed limit. And even though we've been driving the speed limit, most of the other cars here in Spain, I'd say, haven't been because we've been getting passed constantly. Now, when it came time to get fuel, it was a little bit confusing because, of course, the prices are in euros and also in liters. So you do have to do a little bit of math to actually figure out what you're paying, and it definitely is more than what you're going to be paying in the States. I actually spent a few minutes trying to figure out how to pay at the pump before I realized that you couldn't, at least at that gas station. You just have to fill up your vehicle and then go inside and pay for it, kind of like you used to do in the States.
Sadly, we have made it to our last destination on this trip, but we are at a really cool Airbnb. It's got this lower area where you can watch TV, and it has a little kitchenette, and then you go up these stairs, and that is where the bedroom is, which is very nice and cozy. You've got the bathroom up here. I love the tile next to the sink. The shower is a good size, but I think what I'm most excited about is this door. You can see up the street. There's a cool church in the distance, and you can see down the street. This is a really neat mountain village to be staying in.
We wish we would have gotten out and about a little bit earlier to see sunset over the city. Once again, these mountain villages continue to amaze us with how beautiful they are.
Now, from our time in these mountain villages, we are noticing some similarities. Their buildings are old and white. Their roads are paved with brick, really narrow and very windy. They all have a cool church, and most of them even have a castle.
While we did find plenty of differences between rural Spain and rural US, I think we were both surprised by how easy it was to get around in Spain and fit in with the culture. But we can't necessarily say the same about our time just to the south in Morocco. And you can see our experience there by clicking here right now. Thanks for watching!